Rock the Ripple. Rock the Ripple. The Rock the Ripple podcast with Narita McInnes.
Let's do this. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Rock the Ripple podcast. I'm your host, Narita McInnes. It is so awesome to be here with you as always. And today is another very exciting day because I have another very special guest on the show. He is a shaman, a healer, an energy worker, and a deep thinker who loves to throw ideas around and share his wisdom and insights from the car, a park, or any warm place that he can find on his YouTube channel. There is, of course, so much more to this incredible human. He is the one and only Hamish Bartholomew, or Bartholomaeus. Hamish, did I get that right? Welcome to the show.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Narita. It's lovely to be here.
Oh, it's so good to have you. Did I get this? Did I say the last name right both ways?
You did, yeah. Either way, yeah. It's all good. I'm very flexible. Yeah, Bartholomaeus is how my family says it, but it's meant to be Bartholomew. So
yeah,
just roll with whatever you want, really.
Well, do you get that all the time? Do people ask you that?
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be an issue anymore, but like growing up, it was how do you deal with a name? Like, how do you even spell a name like that? It's 13 letters in it. It's nuts. So yeah, it was a big thing growing up with other children, especially. But yeah, not so much anymore.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Well, with last names aside, I would love for you to share a bit more about you. I came across you through Alicia Brachet through Cosmic Gateway, the beautiful Alicia. And then I've since tuned into some of your videos on YouTube. So you do share a lot of different insights and all that sort of stuff. And I remember listening to you chatting with Alicia somewhere, and I was just like, this guy seems really cool. I'd love to hear what else he thinks. Like, you've got this brain that just ticks over and taps into so much. So, you know what, Hamish, who is Hamish Bartholomew?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. Well, like the physical avatar version of me, kind of grew up in the outback, out near Broken Hill on a family sheep station. So it was fairly normal upbringing for out there, family, grandparents were on the property as well. Very lucky with that. And nearest neighbors were kind of half an hour's drive away. So yeah, I just grew up with my two siblings and my family there and did School of the Air there. So like remote learning, and then off to boarding school because there was no high school anywhere near us. So that's all you could do really down in Adelaide where you are.
Yeah.
And then went back, after boarding school, just went back, and uni had no appeal to me at all. And I'd done enough of classrooms in school by that stage. So just went back and started working on properties and, leaning into life a little bit, and eventually met my wife and got married and moved around a little bit with her. And then it just, all the stuff that we do as children, because I was a reasonably weird kid, probably, when I think back to it. People put up with my weirdness. But then boarding school will knock a fair bit out of you, and it certainly did with me. And so I put my game face on and lent into life and tried to be normal, and as normal as I could be, which probably wasn't that normal.
Yeah.
And then I guess around 2007 or 8, the weird just started coming back up in different ways. And I started leaning back into things that were a little bit off track from what was provable or hard science or all of that straight line railroad realm, and started to embrace my weirdness again, and it just went further and further and further, and here we are.
Here we are, full blown weird.
Full-blown weird again, yeah.
It's the only way to be, though, isn't it, Hamish?
I think so. I actually don't know how I managed to pretend to be so normal for so long. I pulled it off somehow, but man, that was tough.
Oh, so can you tell me? I want to know all about your weird. Just like share away. Like what do you do? Like where does the weirdness? Tell me everything.
Yeah, I guess I grew up doing like having the sleep paralysis and OBEs and like lucid dreaming and bringing stuff back from dreams, like bringing stuff from the dream and then having it appear in life a couple of days later, like all of that sort of really strange stuff. And as a child, that was just me. Like that was just how it was. I mean, but my internal life was so nuts. I mean, I had to sleep with a light on. I was in a room with my brother, and it annoyed him. Like it drove him nuts. He was 3 years older than me, and he couldn't get to sleep with the light on, and so I'd have to wait until he fell asleep and then turn my bedside light back on so I could go to sleep, because like the dark was more alive than the light. Like I knew what was there, and it freaked me out as a like 5, 6, 7 year old. So my internal like imaginary world was very, very, very full as a child. And I guess I learned how to navigate that and not be, you can only be scared for so long before you just go, all right, like whatever, just do it. Like whatever you're gonna do it. And it turns out they don't, because they can't do anything to you really. And then the fun begins. So yeah, all of that good kind of like dream walking, deja vu, shamany kind of stuff, that was just, I kind of realized that not everyone was like that after a while, I suppose. But that was just me growing up, and I just went, oh well, I'm just strange, so I just went with it. But then after trying to shoehorn myself into the normal world and making money and having a business and all of that sort of stuff was just, yeah, I was incompatible with that. Like I went well, it was fine, but it wasn't me at all. So I just had to get back into being weird, and like I guess embracing my gifts would be a way of putting it. Like I seem to be reasonably good at bringing in information and seeing what's there and getting out of body and like analyzing what's going on and being helpful for people in that way. So it's just good to be able to help people like that.
That's awesome. And for people who don't know, an OBE is an out-of-body experience, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And there are lots of different ways of doing that. Like some people are getting like the sleep paralysis thing and actually getting out of their body, so it feels to them like their whole point of view leaves their body and they can turn around and look back at their body. Like there's that version of it, all the way down to just closing your eyes and imagining you're doing it, because like imagination is actually the gateway to pretty much everything. That's why we're steered away from it and told that it's nothing, because it's not nothing at all.
I remember Bob Proctor always saying that your imagination is the best nation there is.
Yeah.
I love that.
For sure. And you can front load yourself and kind of like end up in a little fantasy realm all on your own, but that's all of the, I guess, in a way they're semi-religious practices, but they're just because they're hooked up to those sort of religions, like those practices of taking things as they come, like seeing what's actually there rather than what you expect to be there. And if you can get yourself really good at seeing what's there, like a child does, rather than just what you expect to see, then when you go into your imagination or dream or astral or whatever, then you won't front load yourself. You won't be looking for what you expect to see. You will actually see what's there. And that makes a big difference. That's why, to me, that's why so much of the media, fairy tales, old stories, like all of that front loading, there's a lot of wisdom in there, but there's a lot of front loading in there as well to get you to expect to see things the way they are. And so you go out and you see that the world's a round sphere, or you see the Star Wars, or you see Star Trek, or you see the vampires, or whatever, right? Because that's what you've been front loaded with. But are you actually seeing what's there, or are you just seeing what you expect to see?
Yeah. Well, I love that. I love that. It's so true though, isn't it? It's so true. So you've got kids as well. So how do you sort of instill that in them to get them to see, like, is that a challenge? And I guess both children are different, each of them as well.
Yeah, they are. We have 3 children, and they're all very different.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's we're lucky in a way because we're homeschooling them, and so there's a lot of front loading that's not happening with them, but they are still like out in the community a fair bit and doing lots of different things. So they're hanging out with children their own age, older, younger. They've still got all of that going on because we're in a town. So it's just like, it's like anything really. You've got to allow it to unfold the way it does, and then just try and bring in another perspective. So you just let it kind of be what it is, and then say, well, maybe it's like that, but maybe it's like something else. Like you don't actually know what it is. Oh, but everyone says it's this, or this is what the science teacher told me, or whatever. and it's continuing to instill in, because with children it's kind of easy. With adults it's a lot harder, because you get these ingrained habits of, well, the sun always comes up in the morning, so we expect the sun to come up. It's like, yeah, but don't expect it to come up. Like just don't, and just see what happens. And it probably will, but you like, why second guess it? Why not wait to see what's actually there? And so it's just that process of really not saying this is the way to do it, because no one knows the way to do it. That's ridiculous. It's just always questioning even yourself, and staying really fluid and flexible, and making sure you're seeing what's there rather than what you expect or what you think or what you've been told.
Yeah, no, I love that. And what I would love to know as well, because you're a shaman and you're a healer, and I'd love to know about the work that you do and all that sort of stuff, and talk all about this. I mean, I've written down a whole heap of stuff here too, like little circles, like topics as well, because I know there's so many directions we can go in. So I feel like we'll just, but let's start there.
Yeah. Okay. So I started off working with like myself and other people, as in family, through Reiki, because that seems to be the gateway drug for any of this stuff. And then just worked through energy healing and using colors and distance and on, and then found like shamanism and soul retrievals and that, and just went, oh, this is what I do. Like, this is my language. This is how I've been operating my whole life. This is how like animism is how I see everything. And so this makes a lot of sense. And I just dug in through those channels. And so now, I mean, it's really hard for me to describe what I do with someone, or how a session would look, because they're all a bit different. But it's anything from, emotional issues to spiritual, energetic issues to physical issues. Like, however it's presenting, it's just, if someone thinks I can help them and they come to me, because I don't like advertise or have a website or anything. It's all word of mouth, which is the way I like it. And so if someone comes, they've been pointed towards me for a reason, and it works out a lot better that way. And really, from the outside, it would look like trauma counseling a lot of the time, because there's quite a bit of talking going on, and even though the energetics is happening in the background, it just looks like it's all talking and angling around traumas, because what I've found is quite often, like the squeaky wheel, like the trauma, the issue that you've got is usually covering up the actual issue that's like hiding underneath it. And so if we can find the trauma, and then we can shift the trauma, because it's really not about the trauma at all. It's usually, the trauma is very impersonal and has nothing to do with you at the end of the day. It's what it's covering up, that what it's hiding. And so we get in from that angle. And I, like, no matter how I'm working, whether I'm kind of in there energetically doing stuff, or I'm just guiding the person and they're doing it all, it's verbal, it's non-verbal, whatever it is, I'm always trying to give people the tools so they can do it themselves. Because me playing tarot reader and just saying, oh, I see something on your left shoulder, let me just remove that, like, that's not useful. Like in a like accident and emergency situation, that's useful, but in an acute situation, that's not helping anyone. That's just like me making a good bloke of myself, and maybe you'll pay me for it. Like that, I'm not interested in that. So I'd rather walk you through how you would do it yourself, but I'm part of it at the same time, so I can help out. And if we get stuck, or I'm holding space, so that always helps as well energetically. But all the time, you know what's going on. Like I'm telling you everything that's going on. You're telling me most of the time what's going on because I like my language is not really useful, and there's no point me front loading you. So I'll just be prompting the person to tell me what they're seeing
Yeah.
and tell me how they're feeling and using their language. And because language is really important as to how you're perceiving things. And so my language is my language, but what are you seeing? And what's your language around it? And so the idea of like what color do you see? Well, I see orange, but you see purple. Like it doesn't actually matter what I see because someone will say, oh, well, you've got all the experience. It must be orange then. I'm like, no,
No.
no, 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 no. So I keep quiet about that as much as possible. And I want to know what you're seeing because what you're seeing is relevant to you.
Yes.
And then, you know, I'm trying to get to a space where we're at the end of the session, there's resolution on one or a number of things, but also you could go back through those steps yourself and without me present and get an outcome on your own because now you've got a toolkit and you don't need me. And so if you were to call on me next time, we'd be building your toolkit more and building it more and building it more because I'm not interested in patience to like, have to keep coming back to me. That's not going to get us anywhere. So
yeah, I love that you said that so much because that to me is a true healer. Like you're holding space for people and you are allowing them to give you the information because ultimately we are all our own healers, aren't we?
yep.
And some of us just have different tools and we're sharing them with each other. And that was another thing you shared on one of the videos that you were talking with on an interview. And it was around blind spots. And I loved it. And I actually wrote it down. And this is to help with trauma. And it's a tool for anyone to use. And I'm sure you use it so often. But it was, if I was to have a blind spot, where would that be in my body? And what would it look like? What would it feel like? What color? Something around that. And I just thought that's beautiful because that's the best way to find something. And you were sort of saying, oh, there's something in my leg. Okay, what is that? And you're talking to your body because our body is our wisdom, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's got everything. Like doesn't matter how you want to look at it, whether you're going to look at it like as a hologram or as a like a whatever. You can turn this into any model that you want. And at the end of the day, the microcosm and the macrocosm is your body. Like everything that's in your field is everything that's pertinent to you. So if there's an issue that you're having, it's in your body or it's around your body somewhere. And if you don't know where it is, then you don't know, which is the blind spot thing, right? So it's like, then it's like asking a quick, because your body will know. And even if your body doesn't know what it is, like there's a version of you, if you can expand out enough and connect enough, and people call that the highest self or the whatever. But if you can just connect with that version of you that has like this 360-degree omni vision, like there are no blind spots there. It sees everything. And you just ask it, like, where's the most relevant blind spot that I have that I need to work on? And just go, oh, yeah, left shoulder. Like it knows. It'll tell you exactly what's going on. And then you can go in there and you would have never gone to look at your left shoulder until the energy was creating such an issue that you had pain there. You'd be like, oh, well, I've got pain in my left shoulder. I must need to stretch it. I must need to go to the chiropractor. I must need to, and look, that stuff will work. It's not like it won't. You can work on this thing from both angles or any angle you want, really. But everything's energetic first. Everything's an idea first. So if you can get in and work at the level of ideas and energy, then you're going to be able to get it from more than one angle because you're definitely going to work on it physically. You're going to do some exercises. You're going to see the osteopath, whatever. But if you can also find the trigger of what caused it and remove that, then the body can heal itself.
Yeah.
But if you can't get rid of that, hot coal or burr or whatever it is that's sitting in there, that idea that's causing trouble, the body can't heal itself. It's just that wound just keeps getting reopened or reinflamed or whatever it is.
So you could ask what's underneath that. What is that? Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely. And just like, because it's just layers and layers and you just keep on going in, like keep asking. And it's like the way I guide people in to start with around that who haven't done this sort of work before is I get them focusing on their breath, because the breath is this connector between physical movement and energetic movement. That's why all the focus on breath work. And I get them to focus on their breath and look at it, and so they'll be just like they're bird watching or something, and really observing their breath. They're checking it out, and then I'll get them to ask a question like, what temperature is the breath? What color is the breath? And what invariably happens is they notice that the breath didn't have a color when they were looking at it. And as soon as they asked what color it was, bang, it's yellow. They just know that it's yellow. And it's not that it wasn't yellow before, it's just you weren't seeing it because you didn't ask the question. So asking those questions of ourself to broaden our perspective of what the data is, that because we're like, our brains are, well, our brains, but our whole processing system in a way, and this is scientifically proven, like physically proven, we're absorbing so much data every moment.
Yeah.
And we're cognitively processing, what is it, 5% of that data, 2%?
Yes.
It's a tiny amount.
It's tiny,
and so your cognition is deliberately throttled down to what your brain and your body and your whole system thinks that you can cognitively handle. So, I mean, if you think you can handle more, ask the question. So what color is that? Oh, it's yellow. Bing, now you're at 3%. What temperature is that? Oh, well, it's a bit cold, actually. Don't. Now you're at 7%. And you can broaden your cognition by asking those questions, because you're showing that you're ready for more in a way.
Yeah, yeah. That's so cool. And I think so many people walking the planet right now have trauma.
Oh,
And that is just that is
Yeah.
what we're here to heal right now, isn't it? And we'll eventually get to a point where we don't need to do that. But
Yeah.
right now, like, so much shit is coming to the surface, and it ultimately all starts within, doesn't it? And then
Yeah.
it's really our responsibility to do what we can with ourselves, with our body, with our own trauma. We can ask for help. That's okay.
Yeah,
We don't have
absolutely.
to do it all ourselves, and then learn the tools. Isn't that right?
That's exactly right. Yeah. Everyone is dealing with trauma because, like, here we are, whatever this system is, and all of these systems that we're involved in, they all utilize trauma training to get it done. Like, whether we're talking like military or health or education or the monetary system or just day-to-day governance in a town or a city, or everything's based on trauma training, like a dog or a horse. Like, the dog does the wrong thing, whack it on the nose with a rolled up newspaper, and then it gets a shock and it doesn't really hurt it, but then it won't do it again. That's trauma training, right? You're using a traumatic experience to train a being to not behave in the way that you don't want it to behave. And classrooms and schools are classic for that, let alone military and business, and on it goes. And so everyone's got trauma to some extent, because that is the way everyone's been parented. That's the way everyone's been raised, is when it hits the fan and push comes to shove and everyone's under pressure, it's just like a quick, sharp smack to the child, and it just happens because it happened with your parents and it happened with their parents, and you do it much less than they did it, but it'll still come out under pressure. And because that's where the autopilot stuff comes out. And our autopilots in these systems, this systematic way that we've been brought up, the autopilot is trauma training. So everyone's, even like, not everyone's gone through a war zone, not everyone's experienced famine, not everyone's been raped or brutally beaten, or, like, there are absolute levels and a spectrum to the trauma. But then something very small to a 3-year-old is traumatic.
Yes.
And that can affect your whole life on the other end. And you don't even remember it happening, but it remembers you, and it's making you behave in this certain way, and you've got no clue what's going. So it's kind of it's insidious in that way, because the younger you can get that trauma training started, the less chance you've got of actually seeing what's going on the surface.
Yeah.
So it's, like you say, it's about healing that and getting everyone to a point where they can do it themselves, or it just happens by itself. Like it becomes a snowball effect, and it's just healing. Like you're just becoming more whole and less traumatized without even deliberately sitting down to do the work. Like it just starts to happen all on its own, and you start to deal with stuff in a day-to-day, moment by moment setup. And from there, yeah, that's when it really starts to get fun, when you can start doing that.
Yeah, that's so good. There's so much of that that's just really big at the moment. I really feel that across the board, and so many people are going through stuff. And even when you've done a shit ton of healing, and then you have more layers put on, you're like, mate, really? There's
Yeah,
more? Like,
there's
yeah.
more. There's always more.
Do you find that for yourself even? Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, I started on myself. I didn't start working with other people. I started like I started with the hands-on healing and the homeopathics, and I started it to look after my family, right? I started it because I had a family, and I was like, well, I have these abilities, sort of, I think. I don't really even know what they are, but I can use them to help my family and look after them. And then I realized that actually you're not any help to anyone if you're broken yourself. And so I started doing a lot of work on myself, and continue to. I'm my best client.
Yeah.
But I did a lot of self-work before I went anywhere near, like years and years and years of self-work, and like dabbling with family work before I went anywhere near doing work for anyone that they might even pay me for, or trade for, or anything, because you've got to get clean first. Otherwise, you can, if you're not clean, you can still help other people, but your energetic signature is like, it's like helping someone and your hands are dirty. Like then they've got dirty handprints all over their white dress, and you help them in one sense, but then you've left all this grub all over them in another sense, and now they've got to wash all of that off. And so I mean, that's a very good metaphor for how it goes. You really, if you're going to be working with other people, part of the responsibility that is there, if you're willing to accept that responsibility, is getting yourself and keeping yourself as clean and as clear as possible. So you're not bringing any of your own stuff to the table as much as you possibly can. Like I have people contact me again, and they're like, oh, so you remember in our session when we did, and you spoke about, and I'm like, no, remind me. Like, obviously you remember, so remind me, because it really, a lot of it for me is in one ear and out the other. Oh, it'll come back if I need it. But I mean, I don't need access to what happened to you when you were 5 years old, and I don't really want access to that. And so if I need to know that, if it comes up through the session and we can help you to get to a better place in your life around that, that's fantastic. But that's not stuff I'm going to retain. Like, I've got a family of my own to deal with. I'm not worried about your stuff. So I don't retain any of that. And like, if you were trying to retain that, or, trying to do this work for your own benefit somehow, I just don't think you'd get access to it in the same way.
Yeah. And that's so true. I mean, and like we were saying, like, obviously you still work on yourself, but you've really got to get to a point where you can be there and hold space for people and not bring in your stuff. And and I'm sure that can be challenging sometimes.
Definitely. Yeah. And then what I've found happens then is people come to you for help or for guidance or whatever, and you can help them, but what you're helping them with is also very pertinent to you.
Yes.
Or someone in your close circle. And so as you're helping them, you're also getting this insight into, that actually needs to be applied back to me or someone around me in some way. And so that, without, it's kind of like grabbing onto it and going, well, that's my stuff, and you kind of get triggered by it, and you can pull back enough that you're not getting triggered by the situation anymore. You're just seeing that it's pertinent and useful. And sometimes you don't even need to apply it to your life. You help someone out, and just the fact of you helping them in a situation that is so relative to something that's going on with you, just by osmosis, the situation just clears for you
Yeah.
through helping them.
Yeah.
So it's like we're all, I mean, that idea of we're all walking each other home, it's not quite like that, but it is in a way, like we are all just helping each other out one way or another.
You know, like as you were saying that, I'm like, I actually find that in podcast episodes, like people will be saying something, because I remember someone saying, oh, you know, what's the biggest aha moment or something, you know, in all the episodes. And I'm like, I couldn't think of anything. And afterwards I was like, you know what it is? It's stuff that people say. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is what I needed to hear today. You know, like, or that just relates to that. It's
Yeah.
so beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's
it
the
is.
dance of life, and people come in right when you need to. And, you know,
Yeah.
whoever's listening to this interview and podcast, chinwag, I should say, let's be honest, they will be getting, oh, that's what I needed to hear today. Or
Yeah.
that just, yeah, it's awesome, isn't it?
Yeah. And it'll work like that if you allow it to. If you don't kind of grab onto it, and like life will just work like that in general. If you can let it flow a little bit, it seems like that to me anyway. It'll deliver you what you need. Like the algorithm's always listening, and it's always going to feed you. You know, you talk about buying a canoe, and then all of a sudden everything on your phone or your computer's trying to sell you a canoe. But that's just a copy of our system. Like that, because everything in here is a copy. So that is just showing us like they've ripped that off as well. That's just another
Yes.
copy of our system. And our system is you and I will sit down for a conversation and a chinwag, and whatever comes up in that conversation, there's going to be something that's a takeaway that's useful for you. There's going to be something that's a takeaway that's very pertinent and useful for me. And there's going to be like at least one person that listens to this, and it's an absolute light bulb moment for them. And that's it. That's all we're doing is just like sharing data around that's relevant and pertinent, because that's how we operate. And if you're not, like, if you haven't come in to listen to this saying, well, I've heard 10 things that Hamish has done already, and I maybe even had a session with him, I know exactly what he's going to say. And like, if you don't front load it and you're just there, just listening to whatever's going on, something's going to come in that'll be helpful, because it always does.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so good. It's so cool how it all works. Like, it's exciting. Like, I love that. And I love how you just said, like, because even though I know this, the way you just explained, like how it's the copy, like that is what we do. Like, we manifest like that. We imagine it first, and then it comes outwardly. Like, that is how it is. And that's why when you want to buy a red car, you'll start seeing red cars everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's just the AI or whatever it is mimicking that, the synthetic, however you want to call it.
Whatever you want to call it. Yep.
Yeah.
It's just mimicking us. And that's what it always does. Like and everything is kind of a mimic of us. When you break it down, like all technology is a mimic of the human body, all of it, or the spiritual systems. Like, and the more you get to know about the energetic and the spiritual systems, the more you can see that this thing that we're walking around in is just a mimic. All of it is a mimic. And we don't need any of it particularly. But it's like, I can remember seeing technological things going, oh, that's so cool. And now I'm looking at it going, yeah, it's so cool. They're selling our own shit back to us. Like, that's us, right? And we're giving them our time, like whatever time is, doesn't actually exist anyway, but we're giving them our energetic, focused attention, however that comes in money or just consciousness or whatever. We're paying them our energetic, focused attention while they sell our stuff back to us, and not even a very good version of our stuff, like a pirated version with all these back doors in it. I'm like, this is the best shell game ever. Like, they've got us on toast doing this stuff.
That's so true. Oh, I love it. I love it. But we are so freaking powerful. That's the thing. And that's what it all comes back to, doesn't it? Like, we're remembering that.
It does. And the paradox of nothing can hurt you, like from a real, like, capital T, true, energetic, spiritual level. Nothing can get you. Nothing can hurt you. But you can, like, take a hit in here. You can take a pretty significant hit in here, and you can be hurt, and so there's this paradox. And it's like, if you can hold the paradox of that, like, is the earth round? Is the earth flat? Yes. Right? Like, if you can hold that paradox and not be too pissed off by it, but don't enjoy it. Like don't revel in the paradox and be happy about it. Like be annoyed because the
Mm.
paradox doesn't make any sense. But if
Yeah.
you can hold it and still like manage to hold it even though you're annoyed by it, that's when it'll start to unpack a little bit. It's like, yeah, you are totally powerful and nothing can get you at all
Mhm.
in any of these dimensions or realms or whatever. But you can still take a pretty bad hit in here and get hurt. And someone would listen to that and go, Hamish, you're talking nonsense. Like, that's not useful. That doesn't mean anything. It's like, yeah, it is nonsense and it doesn't mean anything. But what if it was true?
Mm.
How could it be true? If
Yeah.
nothing can get you, but you can still be hurt because you're all powerful, how is that possible? Well, that would only be possible if something convinced you to hurt yourself because you're the all powerful one. Only you could hurt yourself because nothing else can get you. So that
Mm.
means the only way you can take a really bad hit in here is if you're convinced somehow to either take the hit or you have been tricked into hitting yourself.
Mm.
And that, like, now that starts to unfold this whole thing of, okay. And it's not like I don't enjoy the paradox at all, but
Mm.
it's pulling apart stuff like that to go, there's some serious mechanics going on in here and loopholes. And these beings that are kind of nickel and diming us in this place, they're like bush lawyers. Like they're just loopholing and lawyering us from one end to the other. And we're like, well, I'll just decree that nothing can touch me anymore. And it's like, yeah, you can do that, but it kind of didn't quite work, did it? It sort of worked, but
Mm.
then something went wrong. Why did it not work? Like
Mm.
that's the stuff that I enjoy doing is like looking into that loophole and going, okay, so it should work, but it hasn't worked. Why not?
Mm.
Where's the loophole? Where's the back door? Where's the chink in the armor? And how does that even happen?
Mm.
Because we know we're these all-powerful creator beings that can't really be got by anything, yet somehow sometimes we still get got. How
Mm.
does that work?
Mm. We forget,
Yeah,
and that, like, and I know I can feel that you can go so big picture, and that's something that I could like do too. Like if you go all the way up to the very top, like here we start, like, and obviously
yeah,
there's no top or bottom probably, but maybe there is as well.
yeah, yeah.
But and you can look big picture
Mm,
and sort of see, like I created the game,
yeah.
like, and then we all spread out and doing our thing, but we're all still back here and there.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes. That's that paradox, right? We're in multiple places at once, and in one
yeah,
of those places, we know exactly who we are and what's going on.
yeah.
But then in here, we don't. We kind
Mm.
of forget, and we have this. We're not really sure, and it's like all of this is lots of fun, but it's not at all useful unless you can make it useful for your day-to-day life. And that's
Yeah.
what I always try to pull that. Like I only ever go out into that big picture, high octane speculation, what's happening out there, how does it look, to be able to pull it back in here and go, okay, so now make that relevant to the issue you've got now, because
Mm.
we know that we can walk through walls because it is just frequency and
Mm.
everything's frequency. And so if everything's frequency, like even science tells you the wall doesn't even exist. It's just molecules vibrating at a
Yep.
certain rate that make it appear solid, and
Mm.
you appear solid. And so, you can't put your finger through the plank of wood, but then we know that with frequency slipping around, you can put your finger through the plank of wood, and
Mm.
people can walk through walls. Like there's no point saying they can't because it is just frequency. And so it's like, if that's possible, all right, then how is not being able to walk through a wall relevant to what's going on with your life at the moment? Or
Mm.
how would walking through a wall improve your life at the
Mm.
moment? How would
Mm.
being in control of your own frequency or the frequency of what's being projected around you, because you could do it either way. You could match your frequency with the wall so you could walk through it, or you could make the wall permeable. So then
Mm.
your frequency could pass through. Either way you want to do it,
Mm.
is that going to improve anything?
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I'm always going. I'm always going out to get an idea of, well, what does it look like from that direction?
Mm.
But then how do we land the spaceship again? How do you pull it back in here and make it useful to this experience and what we're going through?
Mm. because ultimately we came here to have an experience as well. So it's awesome being able to question, and I'm like all for it. Like I will be a curious cat forever, I think. But it's also the questions that you ask, isn't it? And what it is bringing to you. Like you can ask some pretty shitty questions, or you can ask some really questions that will blow your mind and get you thinking. Hey.
Yeah. And it's like it's that fable about the three wishes, you know, which three questions could be the same thing. It's like we're not trained very well, and we haven't trained ourselves very well to know the questions to ask. And so that's 90% of what I've been doing working with people, is just working out how to frame questions in a way so that we can get an outcome that we want. Because you can ask some really nothing questions. Like you get people connected with themselves with this omnipresent, all-seeing version of themselves. Because we're not talking to archangels or spirit guides. So I'm not like, that's all there and that's all fine and you do you. But when it comes to healing, like everything else has got an agenda, and you want your agenda, not their agenda. So if you're going to work on like personally working on yourself, let's just deal with you only. Even if we could deal with that other being and get it done 5 times faster, there's always strings attached to that. So let's not do that. Let's just work with you and build up that connection. And so you get into that connection with yourself, and then like a nothing question, like, what am I supposed to be doing here? I didn't get an answer. Of course you didn't get an answer. That's a nothing question. Like what answer do you want? Like to learn, to grow, because you wanted to, because you were tricked. Like there's no real answer to that question. Why am I here? What am I meant to be doing here? It's so nebulous, like you're just going to get laughed at. There's no answer to that. But asking something very specific, like what would be the most beneficial thing that I could do in the next few moments to get myself back on the path that I came here to follow? Oh, now that's specific. And you'll get a very specific answer, like put on a pair of blue socks, or go and have another glass of water, or don't go and check the letterbox today for mail, do it tomorrow. Like the answer might not make sense, right? Like it's not like these higher versions of us don't have a sense of humor.
Yeah.
They will play with you a bit, but if you ask questions in a very specific way like that, you'll get an answer. And then when you can look back on that, you go, oh yeah, I was meant to put the blue socks on even though I wanted to wear the yellow socks. Because then when I went out, I was doing something and I was sitting down at the coffee shop and someone said, oh, love those hand knitted blue socks. Where did you get them? And you got in a conversation with this person. Turns out they knew someone who you knew, and this whole thing happened, right?
Yeah.
Would have never happened if you weren't wearing the blue socks. So it's always working at that level. And so asking questions that are worded in a way of like, what's my next step? Because we're kind of in the corner of the room and we want to get back to the center, but there's no, like, you can't just jump and make it in one leap. Like there are steps to take and there are obstacles in the way. And so it's about saying, what's my next step? What's my next step? And the greater version of you will probably never give you more than about 3 steps ahead. And then it'll just go, no, now you need to do what I told you. Like, or not, you don't have to, like, but you asked the question for a reason. There's the answer. You can choose to do it or not, but you won't get more than 2 or 3 steps out in front. And then it'll be like, no, we're not giving you any more. Like you need to do that bit first, and then we'll reassess what's going on. So you can't ever, you probably can, but like from the point where we are at the moment, getting that cognitive picture of like everything and being able to hold it in here, it's not a very easy thing to do. We kind of trip ourselves. We got a lot of programming and a lot of weird stuff going on up here in our ego and our consciousness. And when we know too much, we tend to trip ourselves over. So it's like giving a child the list of jobs to do for the day. You don't want to give them all 50 jobs at once or they'll freak out.
Yeah.
So it's like just 1 or 2 at a time.
Yeah, that is so true. And yeah, I mean, the work that I do, I like to break things down just into bite-sized pieces. Let's not even look at the whole year. Let's just look at the quarter and then break it down to
Yeah.
the week, to the day.
Yeah.
And I love what you're saying there too, because it's an awesome reminder and an awesome way for us to trust our own intuition and our own inner guidance by asking questions and trusting and following it. And when
Yeah.
we do that, we build that inner strength, that inner muscle of knowing who we are and trusting ourselves, because I think so many of us don't trust ourselves. And because of all the programming and the patterning and everything like that, the trauma. And so it's a really good way to really put ourselves in the front seat, the driver's seat of our lives, isn't it?
Yeah, to empower ourselves again, to be able to trust ourselves, because like I feel a lot of the programming and the conditioning is all about getting us to not trust ourselves. And I mean, even
Yes.
our language points at that, like self-deception, self-defeating behavior. And it's like yourself would never do that. Like, why would yourself ever try and defeat itself? Like, that's ridiculous. That's not you. That's your programming doing
Yeah.
that. But you're thinking that it's you. And
Yeah.
so it's getting the more you have a conversation with your actual self, like not the voice up in your head, but like, actually you, and you can get into that space and know what that feels like and know what it sounds like and get a bit of data flow back so you know what the data is, the difference between like the programmed head data and
Mm.
actually you, then you can start to see like what is you and what isn't in your life. And when you do that for the first time, you're like, oh wow, 90% of my life is bullshit. Like it's
Mm.
not me. That's not me. And it's a bit of a freak out moment the first time you do that. But everyone's the same because we're all just running on patterning and programming and traumas and stuff. And we've been taught specifically not to trust our intuition,
Yeah.
not to trust our gut, not to trust our heart. And then we've been traumatized very specifically physically, so we won't trust our gut, or very specifically emotionally, so we won't trust our heart, or,
Mm.
you know, it's a very sneaky little game that's gone on, but we can get out of it. Like we can find ourselves again. And then whatever you think you're doing here, whatever you think this place is, however you think it's meant to play out, like your version of that and how that will come to you, that will come to you if you can just start to listen to your true self and trust it, just
Mm.
little by little, and build up that trust between those versions of you. Then it will start to unfold and you won't be able to be hoodwinked by the
Mm.
BS programming or the entities or whatever. And like I've said this a few times, but my thing of only deal with yourself, don't deal with other entities. And some people are really hardcore about that. I'm like, well, it's not up to me to tell people what to do. If you want to talk to an angel or an archangel or a Greek god or a demon, or like, you go ahead. Like that's
Mm.
a ghost, your dead grandmother, a spirit guide. That's no problem.
Mm.
But just know that these beings, like, they have a lot more working knowledge of this place than you do, because they're out of their bodies, and our bodies are kind of like suits of armor in a way. They should be protective like a castle, but they're kind of a bit more like a prison sometimes. And
Mm.
they narrow your field of view, and until you work out how to use it properly, you don't have a very good idea of what's actually going on in here energetically. And these other beings do, because they're out of their body. They can see all this other stuff. And so they can pull the wool over your eyes quite easily. That doesn't mean don't talk to them or
Mm.
communicate with them. That
Mm.
just means you really need to know who you are and what's going on, and to trust yourself before you do that. Because if
Yeah.
you step into a situation where you're going to give all your authority over to them and trust them, you're going to get led around by the nose. That's not going to
Mm.
work very well.
Yeah. Well, that's giving your power away anyway, isn't it?
And it
So,
doesn't matter whether you do it to your dead grandmother, a spirit guide, or the used car salesman. You're going to get
mm.
your ass handed to you when you give your power away.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why it's so important to be so discerning, to have that connection with yourself. And really, that is part of the work, isn't it? Doing that work to know yourself and to
Yeah.
remember who you are, which
Yeah.
everyone always says. It's like, well, what does that mean? It's like, remember how powerful you are. Remember that you have your own healing and guidance system, like
Yeah.
all that sort of stuff,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Exactly. And like someone said to me last night in a conversation, actually, thanks, Hayden, if you're watching this.
Hi, Hayden.
I'm sure he will. He reminded me and pointed out, the beautiful truth that in here, for the most part, you don't get to know what truth is. But you do get to know what truth isn't.
Yeah.
You got a really good idea of what's not true. And so just keep cutting out what's not true. Forget about what is true, because you're always just going to find relative truths, and then it'll turn out maybe it was half right, but sort of not. And you, whenever you see something and you call it a truth, you kind of put it up on a pedestal, and that means it's going to get pulled down at some stage, because that's just what goes on in here. So forget about finding the truth or even relative truths, and just work on cutting out things that aren't true, because that'll keep you much busier. Like there's a lot of that. And just keep, and you can know with absolute certainty what isn't true. You're going to have a really hard time pinning down what is true. And I suggested to him, the reason we have such trouble pinning down what is true is because we are truth. Like we are kind of the all of the copying and the cloning and what goes on in here. We are really truth in here, and a knife can't cut itself. So how do you actually suppose you're going to know yourself in this realm? Like it's going to be pretty tricky for a knife to cut itself. How are you going to get the angle? Like it's just not going to work. Yeah. So forget about trying to know truth and work on getting rid of what isn't true. Just sweeping that off the board, because that'll just narrow the field for you, or broaden it, whichever way you're looking.
Yeah. I love that analogy or metaphor, whichever one it is, like a knife trying to cut itself. Like you can't do it.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. Yeah. And so forget about it, which is that's like the one hand clapping. It's all those Zen koans, just meant to get your brain really engaged and then lock it, like just bog it in place. And it's like, because that just drops the brain out. And as soon as you can drop that mind, the mental body, as soon as you can't really ever disengage it, but it's like giving a dog a bone. If you can engage the mental body in chewing on that bone, and then its teeth get stuck in the bone, it's really busy with that, and you can actually get on with what's going on. But if the mental body's there trying to chew over and process every little thing you go through, it's a nightmare. It's like, because the mental body wants to know everything. It wants to know truth. And it's like, great, well, you just sit over there and chew on the bone, because we can't know truth. What we're going to do is we're going to deal with what isn't true. We're just going to keep removing that and see what comes up then.
Yeah. And you saying that just gets me to thinking, like I've always said, like we're removing the layers that is our limiting beliefs, our old patterns and all that sort of stuff, which isn't true. It's just another way to look at it, isn't it? Because they're just patterns. They're just programs.
They're just thought forms, and they're not even, they're potentially not even real. Like they're only, I was doing that with someone the other day in a session as an illustration. I got her to go to a space, basically like almost an outside of here space. She was just so in her own, in that higher self perspective, really sitting in that, that place where you just are truth, like in that void. She was right in that space, but also, still in the room with me, and we were working on fear. I said, okay, so now you're kind of calm and you're okay, and the body's kind of calmed down, the nervous system. So let's now have a look at the fear, like bring the fear up in front of you and in here. And she kind of did that. And I said, okay, now go to that other space and find the fear. And there's this big long pause. She said, it's not here. I said, that's interesting. So now we've done a lot of work in that other space. Like, so you kind of get the feeling that other space is energetic truth. Like what happens in that space is just absolute truth. It is. And there was lots of crossover between that space and here. Like things, we could see them, they appeared differently. I said, so what does it mean if fear's here, but it's not there? It's like fear's a lie. It's actually it's a deception. It's kind of real in here, but it only ever exists in here. In an energetic reality point of view, it's not even false. It doesn't exist. It's not there. It's like a weird what do the computer people call it? An artifact. It's a weird artifact of the program. Like it's only in this program, but nowhere else. It's just and it rules our lives and our behavior so much. But the energetic reality is it doesn't even exist energetically. It's not there.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of thing where you can really, as you're talking about, like the attachments, the barnacles, the thought processes, the programs, the implants, the entities, all of that stuff, right? A lot of that stuff is just a weird artifact of in here. And when you go outside, or inside is a better way to put it, when you actually go to the true version of you, it's not there. It doesn't exist. So like we still have to deal with it in here, but how are you going to deal with it now you know it doesn't exist? Just like this, it doesn't have an energetic reality at all. So it's almost like you're shadow boxing. You're kind of doing this in the room and you can see the opponent, but the opponent's not there energetically. And I think we get tricked into wasting a lot of time and energy shadow boxing things that are not an energetic reality. They only exist in this kind of illusion world that we're in here, but nowhere else.
Yeah, which is kind of another paradox, really.
Total paradox because like we exist in both spaces, and like she was looking at family members that exist in both spaces, and even her house, kind of her what she was calling home, existed in both places. Like there was this thing where all of this stuff was existing in both spaces, but the fear absolutely did not exist in both places. And so it's like it is one of those slippery little paradoxes that you don't have to be happy about it, but you have to be able to hold it to make it work.
Yeah, and be able to walk in two worlds, really. Yeah,
and know that the world that we're walking in here is the dream. Right? And what we call the dream, or even if we can get further out, like that's actually more of a reality than this one. This one's the weird mirror realm, the crazy one. This one in here, nothing makes sense in here at all. And so if all you know how to do is navigate in here, and in here makes logical sense, of course, when you get out of your body, when you go into the dream space, when you go into astral, when you go internally in as far as you can to try and find yourself, none of the mechanics in there will make sense because it like you only know how to deal with this upside down, inside out mirror realm.
And do you think we came and chose to came into this realm to not just learn and grow, but to also flip it back I will say right way. That's, you know what I mean? Like, do you think that's part of it?
I know what you mean. I think that there are lots of different reasons why beings came in here. Lots. So I think it's all on the table because this is not just one place in a way. There are lots of different realms all stacked up, kind of on top of each other, but they look like they're pulled out of different worlds, dimensions, whatever you want to call them. And beings kind of exist in all of them in a way. And so you might have actually come in here to be in the God realm or the galactic realm or the somewhere else, like one of those other, but you've got a place marker in here as well because they all overlap. So some people probably did come in here to have a go at the VR or check it out or see what it is. Some people probably did get trapped in here. Like they got tricked into coming in. They thought it was one thing, then they got stuck in here and they couldn't get out. Maybe it was built as a prison initially. Maybe it was built as a palace that then got turned into a prison. That's the Vedic, the Indian story of it's Maya. It's the palace of illusion. But you just got so lost in the mirror realm that you couldn't find the door again to find your way out. Like so, that's and I think all of that's on the table. And so some people do resonate with the fact that they came in here to learn something or work something out. Some people absolutely resonate with the idea that they were trapped or tricked into coming in here, or they were in here when this thing was built and it wasn't like this. It wasn't a trap. It was something else. And then it got turned into a trap afterwards. And suddenly they couldn't find the exit and they couldn't get out. And some people definitely resonate with that. They came in here to switch it off, like to get everyone out and then turn it off and just go, nah, that we're done with that. Like this experiment, this was a neat experiment, but it went way too far. And because everything's connected, all the trauma and the torture and the suffering that does go on in here, real or not, like it is real on some level, and everything's connected. And so it has an effect through all the realms, and it has an effect outside of here. So it was a great experiment, but this needs to get sorted out now. We can't let this keep rolling. So I feel like that's why people will argue till they're blue in the face about one or the other, because some people, some people's bodies actually work really well being vegan. Like it's amazing, right? They're the healthiest they've ever. It's not just the cleanse. It's not just a 3-month thing. Like they're actually 20 years in on being vegan and they have no deficiencies and they're great. And some people, their bodies work perfectly eating red meat only and not touching any vegetables at all. And if they eat vegetables, it's not great for them. And the other ones, if they eat meat, it's not great for them. And then there's this whole group in the middle that's kind of like, mostly meat with some vegetables is great for them. Mostly vegetables and fruit with a little bit of meat. Like there's this big spectrum. And so it's kind of, for me, to say there's just one thing going on is like, oh no, there's a lot of different stuff on the table in here. And it's the paradox again, in a way. And if you think that there's one diet, one blood group, one race type, one way to astral travel, no, that's not how it's going. There's so many different groups overlaid in here that it's hard to get a beam on what's happening a lot of the time. It's very confusing.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, ultimately, we do know it's in an infinite reality. And you can't put infinity, if I can say it, in a box. But you can't. So, I mean, of course that makes perfect sense. And everyone is here for their own purpose and reason and whatever it might be, for all the reasons you just said. And I'm sure there's many more as well too.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why all of my work that I do with people, all of my training with people, any teaching that I do with people is always about what's your story? And let's get rid of as much of the programming and the trauma and the past life stuff, and let's just clear the slate as much as we can so that we can actually see your story and what you think this place is and what's going on. And then when you settle into that, then we'll go a bit deeper and we'll clear a heap more trauma out, and then we'll see how you see this place, because my story is not your story at all. And when we kind of do that thing of, well, the angels are good, but the dragons are bad. No, the dragons are the good ones, but it's the fairies that are bad. No, the fairies are the elementals, but it's the lizards that are bad. And don't demonize lizards, like the snakes are it's like, no, what are you doing? All of it and none of it. There's all these different fractured storylines, and there are some hard truths in there, but a lot of it's just, everything's been thrown into one big pot and the stew's kind of going like this. It's bubbling around, and just because you see a carrot float up to the surface doesn't mean it's a carrot stew, right? There's other stuff in there as well.
Yeah. Oh, I love all your analogies and metaphors that you use. It's just, but to me that as well is good, because it just makes it simple and easier to understand, because this place can be crazy as well. And so there's so many layers and so much going on. So to be able to just sort of bring it back to that is just so important, And
the best term that I ever heard for the layers and the craziness is astral drama, right? There is a lot of astral drama going on in here, and it's and we see it play out in here, but then when you can go into your dreams, go into active imagination, get out of your body, however that looks, you can really get suckered into some pretty big astral dramas. I'm a warrior and I'm saving everyone and I'm all of that stuff, and it's all still in here. It's all still Truman Show. You're not outside yet. If you think you're outside, you're probably not. Going, Keep looking. Like it's
Mm.
just another drama. It's just like all the super soldier stuff, and then all the Greek god stuff, all the Persian god stuff, all the Viking gods, like the South American gods, or just keep looking at it and just going, it's all drama, all of it. And so I always look at what's the energy underneath the drama. Like there's the story, right? Here's the story in the Greek god pantheon. Now here's the story with the Russian gods. Now here's the story with the South American gods. What's the drama underneath? Someone didn't get their own way and they're having a tantrum about it. Great. Like, what is that? Let's deal with that in you. Because if the story's coming up, it's because there's something in you that resonates with it. And so use the metaphor and see, is there something in me that needs dealing around? There's a version of me that feels like it had its toy taken away or it got the wrong, and it's going to have a tantrum about it. Like use it. Might as well use it. You're in here. Might as well try and work it out. But there's like, it's really easy to get lost in the nuances or the how many different languages or the history or the hidden history and it's all just astral drama. Like it's interesting to know that stuff, but it gets back to the whole thing of like, it's interesting to, if someone could walk through a wall in front of you and prove it to you, that'd be really interesting. Like that'd be fantastic to know. Is that going to be helpful to you? If you could see them levitate in front of you or walk through a wall, like how's that going to help your day? And so if it's not, it's just more data points to add to the notebook and then keep moving.
Yeah. And then I guess like if your goal is, I use the word goal, but you know, if you're wanting to transform in your own life, looking at all this stuff is awesome and it's interesting, like you said, and I'll always look at it because it fascinates me, but you've got to have the balance as well, don't you? Because if that's all you're doing is looking out there at all these different things, and then not bringing it back to how it can help you, then you're only looking one way, aren't you? But because you've got to look within to be able to, do the work.
Absolutely. Because it's always like whatever's going on in here, it is a mirror realm in more ways than one. Like most of the stuff that you're noticing in your life is there because you're projecting it out. And even if you don't, especially if you don't know you're projecting it out, you probably are somewhere, somehow. And so it's like, find that. If you're projecting lack or loss or poverty or billionaire, like whichever one, because both of them are a tangle in here, like whichever one if you're actually projecting that out and you don't know that you are, then go and have a look for that and find it, because why not, right? It's just another thing that you don't think you have any control over, and you probably have lots of control over it. It's just you've got this little beacon in you somewhere just resonating out that signal, and then it just bounces off the mirror and it comes straight back to you with a mask on, with another in another form, in another way, and so that you can start to look at those practices of, being still, doing nothing, sitting in a cave, working on your breath, like all dropping the worldly things, like whatever that is. All that's about is like getting rid of what isn't true, dropping the untruths until you can actually see the wood for the trees and get an idea of what's going on. Because the busier you are and the more you're dealing with just the day-to-day untruths of life, family and children and work and money and hot water and whatever, like you're just distracted because that's not what's actually going on.
Yeah. And you saying that just got me to thinking about as well, just we also need to feel whatever we're going through. Like it's not just about seeing it, it's also about feeling it, embodying it, and allowing it to pass through us, because we're energetic beings. So if we haven't felt that and sat in that, gritty, like I'm just feeling like that's something to talk to as well, because
definitely.
if we don't do that, that's stuck energy and that's in our field, and it will keep, it's like trying to put the basketball in the water and not expecting it to pop back up again. It's going to keep doing that until we feel it and let it just dissipate.
Yeah. And when you kind of have like deep conversations with enough different people, you find out that what you find gritty, other people don't. And so it's like, oh, well, that's just some weird thing in here in this earth realm, and I don't want to have any part of that. That's just, no, I'm on my spiritual path and I'm ascending, and I don't want anything to do with that thing. It's like, well, hang on a minute. Other people are dealing with that thing. They're having no issue at all. Why is it a problem for you? What are you having a problem? Where is that problem? What's causing the problem? Why is it, it's a hang up somewhere. And they're the sort of things I like looking at. It's worth knowing about. It's just checking your blind spots and going, okay, so I've got a bit of a bee in my bonnet about that thing and I don't like it for whatever reason, but let's check that out. Like, because I've got all these justifications for why I wouldn't like it, but that's actually a program running somewhere. And if I didn't initiate the program, then something is in control of me that isn't me. And so let's have a look at that, and that feeling, like not even just sitting in the grittiness of the feeling, but just actually trusting the feeling. Like I try and be careful with my language as much as possible. Language is very slippery, but I don't say I think very often. I like to say I feel, because like the brain is so easily hijacked. Like, what do you mean you think? Like, you think what? Do you even know what you're thinking half the time? Like, are those thoughts even yours that you're having, or are they having you? You know, who initiated those thoughts? This thing up here is like a radio transceiver. It's just sending and receiving signals all the time. It's like I try to think as little as possible, because that thing's really easily hijacked or hacked. Whereas your feelings, they can be tampered with at an emotional level, at a program level. Like, they can be tampered with, but they're usually yours. And so the more work you do around the tampering, the truer emotions don't even come into it anymore. You're not even following emotions. It's just feelings. And you start to actually trust those feelings. And you then know that, like, most of the inventors that ever invented anything in here or came up with music or did whatever they did that we thought was amazing, they probably weren't thinking it at all. They just felt something, and then they wrote it down. And then the thought kind of came afterwards. But that most of those people, like, they talk about being a genius, or I mean, that's just like, a genius is just someone who can invite in the genie, right? It's like being imbued with spirit, the muse. The muse is a spirit that comes in and tells you, gives you the song, it gives you the play. Like, all of these things in our language are showing us, like, we don't come up with this stuff necessarily. It comes in from somewhere. And when it comes in through your brain, it's not great. Like, there's not a good track record with the things that come in through your head. When they come in through your feeling, like a whole body, when you bring it through from the inside out, in comes into the world through the portal that's in you, like that way. That's when you're starting to bring in some true stuff rather than false stuff.
That is where the magic happens. And, we are the magic, let's be honest.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I think too, like, when it comes to feelings, like feeling the feelings when you're doing the work and you're going through stuff and that sort of stuff. A lot of people are scared to feel it because they've been, if I feel that, something might happen, but really it's actually the best thing that you can be doing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is because and it's like feeling the feelings are, it's hard, and it can be painful, because there's trauma all wrapped up in it. But like, what is pain? Right? Pain is a message that your physical body is getting to say, what you're doing is destroying the physical body. You need to watch that. And it comes in such a way that we pull our hand off the hot stove, or we snatch our finger away from the knife when we cut it, or whatever. And it hurts, and we say, ow, it hurts, and we don't like pain. But it is just data at the end of the day. And some people process it as data, like they don't feel pain. It's just another sensory perception. They don't kind of recoil from it like that. Some people are calibrated like that. So it's like these feelings can be painful, but what if the pain was just data? Like, what if it wasn't destroying you? Or what if it is destroying you, but the fact that you won't pay any attention to it or move it out of your body, that's what's doing the destroying.
Mm-hmm.
Like this feeling that I'm feeling is painful, and so I don't want to look at it. I'm going to leave it there. You're like, yeah, that's right. Except it's in you, hurting you constantly, and that's what turns into cancer. That's what turns into all of that stuff that
Mm-hmm.
we have. It just gets louder and louder and louder, and the body gets to a point where it can't deal with it, and so something goes haywire. So
Mm.
yeah, it's like when you've got a splinter in your hand, it really hurts, and pulling it out can really hurt as well. But if you don't pull it out, like, what, are you just going to leave it there?
Yeah.
That's not a great plan.
No. No, it's not a great plan at all. Now I'm just imagining all these people with these big fungy fingers with
We
splinters.
do, right? We've got like arrows through our hands and like knives that, like, we've got all this stuff in
Mm,
us, like astral, etheric, like physical,
mm,
emotional. We're just peppered. It's like a war field, a war zone in here, like a battlefield sometimes.
yeah.
We are peppered with all this stuff. But if you don't start pulling it out, like, you're not really going to get anywhere. And that doesn't mean just, go ahead and start yanking it out, because like they tell you, if you've got a knife stabbed in you, you probably
Mm,
just don't want to pull it out, or you might bleed to death. Like
yes.
there's some metaphors that actually do cross over here. Like, be careful with what you're doing, but just don't walk around with all this stuff in you because it's easier than pulling it out. That is not a great plan.
No.
Like, it is painful to deal with some of this stuff, but it is just data.
Mm,
And so it's like, what is the data telling me? The
mm,
data's telling me that thing is really bad for the body, or a lot of the different bodies, the physical body, the emotional body, the spiritual body. This thing's bad and it's hurting us. Great. We better get it out then. Best
yeah.
not leave it there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then it just comes back to what we started talking about, is the self-healing and
Yeah.
knowing ourselves and asking ourselves questions so that we can do that.
Exactly,
And
because some of this stuff, like, what I was going to say when you said that was, if we knew who we truly were, like, we knew, not like it's a mental idea of,
yeah,
well, I'm a god, I'm an angel, like, not that. But if we
no.
really knew, like, that stuff that's sort of stabbed in you and all those wounds, it'd just fall out, right?
Mm,
Because you can't actually be hurt that way. None of that stuff can stick to you.
mm,
And this is another one of those paradoxes of, so why doesn't it just drop out? Why do I have to work on it one by one? Because you don't know who you are.
mm,
I could tell you, you could tell you, you might even see pictures of you that remind you. You don't believe it though. Like,
mm,
deep down, something in you wants to believe it, but you don't believe it. Because if you did believe it, you'd be levitating and walking through walls, and you're not. So
yes.
once again, it's that paradox of, you can know it, but like, until you see it for yourself, really viscerally feel it, you're really not going to believe it wholeheartedly. So you've got to work yourself up to that level. And you do hit, and I'm sure you have, like, you do hit healing spaces where you go through something and you heal it, and then you go back to look for something else and it's already gone. Like,
Mm,
it has just dropped off
mm,
because you've expanded yourself to a level where that thing can't get you anymore.
mm,
And so it's just not there.
mm,
So it does happen that you can kind of get to this point where you're like, oh, that thing that was annoying me, it's just gone. It's like,
yeah.
yeah, because now you actually believe that you're at a level where you're a being with that sort of things. Like, getting stung by a bee is not an issue for you. You're not
Mm,
anaphylactic. It's not going to get you. You can do that now.
mm. Yeah.
So,
And every time you do that, you're again stripping off the layers, but it becomes a knowing, not a, like, when it's a knowing, you don't have to prove that to anyone or yourself, because
and you're
it's
not
a knowing.
interested. You're not
No,
in improving it. When
no.
someone says, "Oh, so show me, so prove it to me," like, no.
Mm,
But like, oh, it's just not even a conversation you enter into. It's like, I don't need to, because I believe it.
mm,
You only need to prove it to someone if you still don't really believe it. But if you do believe it, who cares what anyone else thinks? There's
yeah.
an issue. So
Yes.
that's a really, really good point. Is like, you get to the point where you're not interested in proving it to anyone.
Mm. It's like knowing your own name. It's like, my
Yeah.
name's Narita. Prove it. I don't need to prove it. Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
a knowing,
Yeah,
like,
it
and
is.
maybe it's not Narita in this lifetime, or Hamish, like, but you know what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It's like, it's a conversation you don't even need to enter into when you
Mm,
get to that place. You're just like, no, I you're not even going to argue about it. You're just like,
Yeah.
whatever.
Oh, it's so good. Oh my gosh. I could talk to you all day. Have I already been? How long have we been talking?
We've been a while.
I'm so glad I pressed record. That's great because this has been awesome.
Yeah.
Hamish, like I didn't even really look at, and we have looked at a lot of the stuff I had written down, and there's some other stuff. Maybe there's another time we'll do a chinwag, but
Yeah.
I would love to, well, first of all, just say bloody thank you so much for being on the show today. It's just been awesome. It's just gone in a flash. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
really feel that went so quickly.
yeah.
How can people find you? Because I know you don't have a website, but if someone does want to connect with you and reach out, how can they do that?
So I'm sure if you plugged my name in, Hamish Bart will do. That's
Yeah.
I try to keep it short.
Yeah.
People reach out to me in Telegram, or
Mm-hmm.
I've got an email which we can put in there below, but it's just at
Yeah.
Outlook. That's just Hamish Bart at Outlook.
Mm-hmm.
And people can email me or hit me on Telegram or in YouTube comments or somewhere, and I'll catch it somewhere, and we'll just start a conversation. And like I'm like no processing. I haven't got like a booking system or anything. It's just all manual. I work like,
Yeah.
what country are you in, what time zone. We just work it out personally and go from there. And it works. It seems a bit clunky, but I like having no framework around that. It just
Mm.
feels a lot more fluid.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I feel that too. I think that's a great way to do it. That's awesome. Oh, Hamish, I just want to take this opportunity to thank two people right now. You, of course, for being on the show. And of course, you at home for tuning into this epic episode with Hamish Bart on Telegram. And I'll put all of Hamish's links in the description or show notes so you can check it out and just click straight through. So I just want to thank you for being here. As always, if you love this episode, please give it a like, thumbs up, leave a review if you're listening to wherever you listen to it. Leave a comment, of course, too. Love hearing from you, and I know Hamish will as well too. I'll also link to Hamish's YouTube channel so you can check that out as well. So thank you for being here. Hamish, just thanks again for being on the show and just for bringing all this wisdom and insight and all the good stuff to us all. So yeah, it's been great chatting.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Narita. And it's great. I love talking to people because, like I said back at the beginning, like I don't actually get a lot of access to this stuff, like for my own personal. And so it's like when people ask me questions, then the answer comes, and I get to then I listen to it as I'm like, that's cool. That's great. So it's like, I don't ask questions like that of myself, and I don't get answers either like that, because like you don't need to know that. Just get on with your work. So it's I love having conversations like this because it was a wonderful conversation. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, it was so good. Thank you, Hamish, and we'll have to do it again sometime. And
Absolutely.
yeah, just have the best day, and I look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Yeah, you too. See you, Narita.
See ya.